The Torah portion of Bo begins with the words that God says to Moses, come to Pharaoh. And the Zohar, beautifully, in one of its most fascinating passages, asks the question, God should have said, go to Pharaoh. Why does he come to Pharaoh? Come implies that, come with me. So, Pharaoh represents a demonic force. A demonic force which is typified in the Zohar as the great snake. Tonin HaGodl. And the Zohar says that Moses was scared to go there. This was such a powerful demonic force that the great snake in his inner chamber was something which Moses was scared to go there. Until God says, okay, hold my hand, I'll go with you. And then he went. What is this great snake? What's it represent? So the Zohar doesn't say. But Rabbi Chaim Vital, who was the preeminent scribe of the teachings of Rabbi Isaac Luria, famous 16th century Kabbalist, he typified this great snake as the irrational attraction to physical pleasure. Now, we're all attracted to the physical. But once it becomes irrational, once we'll just go for it, whatever happens, whatever we lose, we could lose our name, our reputation, all our money, but we must have this pleasure, then says Moses, I'm scared to go there. That I can't compete with. I'm trying to bring a Torah here. I'm trying to bring religion to the world, morality, peace, spirituality. We have a great product here, but I can't compete with irrational attraction to pleasure. So God says, okay, I'll come with you. So on this, the Tzemach Tzedek, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, explains very beautifully that subsequent to this story, we must conclude that the Torah does empower us to weaken our passion for irrational pleasure. When you read those words every week of the Torah, every day, it's good to read a portion of the Torah. It's divided into 7 portions. One you can read every day. And when we hear it read publicly in the synagogue, we are being empowered to free ourselves from a trap which we wouldn't be able to free ourselves from otherwise. And that is the attraction to certain pleasures and certain desires in this world that we'd really end up trashing ourselves for if our passions were left uncontained. Powerful words of the Zohar as interpreted by the great Hasidic masters. Chapter 10, verse 2, we read how God is going to enact these great miracles in order that they should be said over to your children and descendants in the future. Now the word that's used here is tisaper, leman tisaper, in order you should tell over. And Rabbi Joseph Caro, the author of the Code of Jewish Law and lesser known, the author of a mystical diary called Magid Misharim, which is Kabbalistic insights revealed to him by an angel, he writes there's a play on words here, on the word tisaper. Sounds very like the word sefirot, which means the emanations of God. The reason why God enacted these miracles in Egypt, says Rabbi Joseph Caro, was not only that you should tell it over to your sons and grandchildren, is that leman tisaper, it was for the sake of the sefirot, to reveal the power of the 10 sefirot. That is why we have 10 miracles. And that is why we have these phenomenal events of history occurring, because God was exercising, disclosing, and showing us the power of these 10 emanations. Now here's an interesting one also from the Kabbalistic diary of Rabbi Joseph Caro. Chapter 10, verses 8 to 11, there's a dialogue between Moses and Pharaoh about whether the Jews can leave for a bit to worship in the desert. Pharaoh says exactly who will be going. Moses replies, with our elders, with the young, we're all going. To which Pharaoh replies, see that evil turns back at you, and then he kicks them out, and he says, get out of my presence. So Rabbi Joseph Caro, or to be precise, the angel who spoke to Rabbi Joseph Caro, reads it as follows. He says, this was an argument about divine disclosure to the forces of evil, to the demonic forces. You see, evil can exist so long as we don't have a great disclosure of spirituality. If there's too great a disclosure, evil simply has to close up shop and will cease to exist. And that is what they're arguing about. Moses says that there's going to be divine disclosure. So Pharaoh says back exactly who will be going, exactly how many sefirot, exactly how many are going to be revealed. So Moses says, with our youth and with our elders, the whole lot, from the beginning to the end, from the highest to the lowest, it's all going to be revealed. Which means that Pharaoh your history. Says Pharaoh back, see that evil turns back at you. Evil will prevail. You can disclose whatever you want, but we're still going to exist. And he throws them out of his presence, because now the demonic forces are intimidated, because they know that their end is near, and they're getting desperate. So it's a very interesting conversation from a Kabbalistic angle about the tension between disclosure and demonic force. Chapter 12, verse 2, we have the mitzvah, the commandment of sanctifying the new month. And famously, Rashi, 11th century French commentator on the Torah, known as the father of all commentators, quotes the Talmud here and says, asks the question, he actually asked this at the beginning of the Torah, surely the Torah should have begun right here in chapter 12 of Exodus. Well, what are all these stories about Adam, about Eve, about Jacob and his family, about the Exodus from Egypt? I mean, that's nice stories, but this is a book of law, and the first law appears here. So surely the Torah should have started here. And Rashi gives an answer over there, which I won't deal with now, but it's a good point. Surely the Torah should have begun here. Now the Kabbalists, particularly Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, has a very interesting insight into why the Torah should have begun here. The Torah represents God unleashed. We get pure, unadulterated disclosure. When you read a verse of the Torah, you are reading pure divinity, which is encapsulated in physical letters, but it's a pure direct path. And a mitzvah literally means commandment, but Kabbalists always like to refer to it in its Aramaic translation, which is tzavtzah, which means connection. A mitzvah is a connection ritual. It connects you directly to God. Now you can ask, well, surely I can be connected to God by going on a mountain, by meditating, by looking at birds. Surely every human face is the face of God. And that's all true. We can connect to God in many ways. But in creation, in the world, God is veiled. We don't see him directly, we see him reflected. You have to look beneath the surface to see God. Whereas in a mitzvah, one of the commandments of the Torah, you get directly to God. And that is why the Torah, that is the basis of our question. Shouldn't the Torah have started with the direct connection? Of course, all that other stuff, all those stories and the whole story of creation, that connects us with God, but we have to pass through tzimtzum, we have to pass through a contraction in order to see God through these events. Shouldn't the Torah have started with the pure, unadulterated disclosure of a mitzvah, of a connection ritual which connects us directly? It's an interesting way of framing that question. And that's why the Torah is a little bit misleading, because that's what the point of Torah is. It's a book of direct light. So shouldn't the Torah have begun with its primary message? Spiritual message for the week. We're reading here, of course, one of the most wonderful stories in the Torah, the Exodus from Egypt. The rabbis explained that the word Egypt, Mitzrayim, is related to the word Meitzarim, which means boundaries, narrowness, constriction. And really what the point is, and this is why we have to remember the Exodus every day, is that lack of insight and confusion in our lives doesn't necessarily come from the temptation to evil. It doesn't necessarily come from being uneducated, although all these are negative factors. It doesn't necessarily come from being brought up badly. The main cause of all the problems in our life is narrowness. And that is why the Torah typifies the essence of evil as narrowness. Get out of Egypt. Get out of your narrow mind constraint, your narrow view of life. You have a problem with an employee, it's because you're looking at things too narrowly. You have a problem with your health, you're looking at that particular organ, that particular part of your body as sick and the rest is healthy. Look at everything broader, from a holistic perspective, from a wider perspective. Expand your consciousness, and in a nutshell, life will be good. Okay, thank you very much, and please join us next week for Torah in 10.